Thank you to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. We've heard whispers before in Destiny. The context of them changes from moment to moment, be they from Oryx, Crota, Zol, Savathûn, the Witness, or any number of characters. But today I wanted to talk about a character that has shot to the forefront of the story in terms of relevance, and I want to talk about whispers that they heard long ago from an object of staggering importance: the Veil. These whispers potentially hint at something darker. As we work against the plans of the Conductor, I think that they are likely to be just another force within the universe that is being bent to an unseen will of a greater being. If that is the case, then that would mean that the Conductor is nothing more than another piece on the chessboard being played by one of our next great foes, the Winnower. Before we get into the meat of all this, let's just start at the top. Today's video all came about thanks to me reading through the Balance of Power lore entry and seeing that it involved Maya Sundaresh and a few key words of interest that were attached to it. In particular, there's a moment in that lore entry where she compares the veil to a knife and states that it must be treated with both caution and reverence. There are also moments at which she hears whispers. At the time, I would have sat there and equated this to some other influence, and maybe I would have questioned why whispers were being heard, considering that the Witness was the likely source of them at the time, and it clearly didn't know where the Veil was. But that was before Salvation's Edge, and our moment when we saw the Witness itself confirm that there was a force that was even more ancient than it was, one that was leveraged in darkness, and one that we were all too familiar with from old Apocrypha.
You call us Winnower. We are not. But the first knife clutched in its hand. Gods forged us both. But they cannot tell the knife what shape to carve.
This one line of dialogue, of course, combined with the message sent to us by the Winnower in the Final Shape pre-order ship, whose lore tab was revealed after the raid was completed, was enough to change the whole of the picture of Destiny's greater pantheon of godlike enemies. Knowing that is also making me look back at other entities that must have communicated with the Winnower, and it's making me re-clarify all of those instances. At some point soon I'll definitely have to revisit the Books of Sorrow, the Unveiling Pages, the K1 articles, and other moments where a voice in the darkness that is clearly the Winnower's has reached out. But for now, I think there is one new connection that we need to intimately examine before we go any further, and that's what I brought up at the start. It's a connection between Maya Sundaresh, and in particular, her interactions with the Veil. So if we are diving into this, we should probably start properly with Veil containment to give everyone an understanding of what's happening here. To put it really simply, the Veil containment logs were a series of audio logs given to us by Osiris and Nimbus that uncovered the teachings of Chioma Essie and her logs as she was discovering more about the Veil. It's from the time of the founding of Neomuna. It's also somewhere where we first learned properly about the Veil, which was direly needed in the aftermath of Lightfall, where it was a giant MacGuffin. As it stands now, the Veil is of importance paramount, because it seems as though it might well be an equivalent to the Traveler, simply leveraged in darkness and not light. Either way, the very first Veil containment log entry that we actually got after completing the first mission to unlock them goes like this.
Chioma Essie. Research log. The Veil. I don't even know where to start. When we landed on Neptune, there was something waiting for us. An alien structure. It's an electromagnetic anomaly. No mass, but a tangible surface area. It's like a thesis statement to the von Neumann-Wigner hypothesis. It's definitely paracausal, like the Traveler. Maya calls it the Veil. She says she heard the name in a whisper when she looked at it. When I asked her who whispered, she said it was her own voice. I still haven't had time to process that. Everyone on the initial survey team died. The minute they touched the object, they entered a state of brain death. All of them. To make it worse, the EM radiation emitting from the Veil is causing psychological distress in the exos that came with us. They've all described moments of intense, hallucinogenic reverie. Some of them went silent and rigid and just stopped. Maya called it billboarding. Something from the early days of Clovis Bray's Exomind project. She doesn't seem afraid or surprised. She's convinced this thing, in her own words, she says, it'll be our salvation.
Fascinating. This corroborates what Nezarec said, that the Veil survived Savathun's escapade. This must have been the root of Savathun's betrayal, stalling the witness's plan to buy time to counter it.
So, she stole the Veil from Nezarec?
And killed him in doing so. It explains what happened to the Lunar Pyramid, why it's dormant.
And what about the rest of this? What happened to the Exos? Is that what happened to all of them?
I have some theories, but it's too early. Regardless, it sounds like the Veil had an ill effect on Dr. Sandaresh. We must be cautious. Hopefully the next log we decrypt will shed more light on this enigma.
There is a lot of important stuff in that, which we could go into more of, but I want to focus on just one bit in particular for the moment. And that's this moment where Maya Sundaresh states that the name The Veil was spoken to her in a whisper that sounded like her own voice. It's probably a fair guess to state that this came from the Veil itself. Maya then goes on to describe the Veil as their salvation. A buzzword for sure. It's at this point, in fact, that I want to dive into that single word and clarify a few things. Salvation as a word has been the Witness's calling card for a long time. It's so synonymous nowadays that when you hear the word salvation, you almost always think Witness. But here's the interesting thing. The Witness did not know that the Veil was on Neomuna. After Savathun hid it away there, it could not have known this. So this probably is not the Witness, whispering to Maya and influencing her. That should really have been a big hint to the idea that perhaps there was another dark entity affecting Maya through the Veil. The other big hint is this. Whenever we see objects that are closely linked to darkness having a tangible effect on those around them, that effect is almost always noetic in quality. That is to say, objects of darkness almost always affect a person's mind or intellect. Finding examples of this isn't hard. Take a look at in-game mechanics and you see Deep Sight. We interact with darkness in certain areas and pockets, and suddenly we're able to open our mind to things that are otherwise invisible, things that otherwise can't be seen or experienced within the world. Take a look at other examples in the lore, and you find instances like the K1 project, where everyone was starting to see hallucinations that turned out to be nightmares when they were unearthing this object of darkness on the moon. So, we should take a lot of care whenever we hear something whispering to us. If it's mentally communicating with us, then whatever it may be, it's probably a powerful entity of darkness, such as the Witness, Nezarec, or Rolk. Which leads me to my big question. Who's communicating with Maya Sundaresh in the lore tab for Balance of Power, the new exotic that came out in Final Shape? Let's go ahead and read this lore tab. We've done enough of a prelude to it now. But first, let me tell you about today's sponsor, War Thunder. War Thunder is the most comprehensive vehicle combat game ever made, and is available now for free on PC and consoles. There are over 2,500 tanks, planes, helicopters, and ships, and the only thing they're missing is an extended vehicle warranty. Or you. I guess you as well. War Thunder has some incredibly realistic and true-to-life detail put into its vehicles, each of which is modeled with graphical fidelity in mind and with a unique true-to-form hitbox. There are over 70 million players worldwide and endless breathtaking battles to experience, along with a ton of content to discover that you'll love if you're a fan of military history. War Thunder also has different modes according to how much you love realism, from arcade where you can get a fast-paced match in, all the way to simulator mode where everything is as true to life as possible, from vehicle performance to physics. And to top it all off, like I said, it's free and available on PC, PlayStation and Xbox. New players and returning players who haven't picked up the game in 6 months can use my link down below in the description or the pinned comment to get a massive bonus pack including goodies like an exclusive vehicle decorator, the Eagle of Valor, multiple premium vehicles, 100,000 Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium. Download War Thunder today. In my mind, I heard it whisper, "Come and see." Maya Sundaresh sits hunched over a display, the only source of light in her dark office. Brainwave scans of 16 exos read flatline on the monitor. "How is Dr. Ardehi?" she asks into an open mic. "Dead." Chioma Essie's voice is a hoarse whisper. Maya switches to the security camera in veil containment and sees her wife kneeling on the catwalk over Dr. Ardehi's body. A procession of dead exos are slumped over the railings to Chioma's left and right. Maya tabs away to study a bar graph. Neuropathy reports show a spike in activity in the prefrontal cortex and hippocampus in the moments before brain death, Maya reports, eliciting a shaky sigh from Chioma over the comms before she continues her analysis. The spikes plateaued for 1/5 of a second, which may indicate a receptor error. We may need to utilize an intermediary rather than direct connections. Do the hardwires show any damage? Maya tabs back to the security feed, watching as Chioma wipes her eyes and then assesses one of the dead exos, checking a thick cable plugged into the back of his head. No sign of damage. Capacitance switches didn't trigger. It's... She swallows down bile. The problem isn't our hardware. It's theirs, is a whisper only Maya can hear. It's theirs, Maya agrees aloud. I think we need to stop, Chioma finds the strength to admit. Reassess our findings. Resume analysis of the initial electromagnetic anomaly before contact. We can't keep shoveling coal into the furnace, Maya suggests as she leans back into her chair. Chioma is too taken aback by the casual disregard to loss of life to reply. You're right, Maya continues. But we're not stopping, we're reorienting. The Veil is the future of humanity. For a moment, neither woman says anything. There is only the soft hum of electronics in a darkened room to fill Maya's senses. That, and a static hiss at the back of her mind. The Veil is dangerous, Chioma asserts. Her voice is tinged with a tremor of emotion. Fear of losing the woman she loves keeps her from pushing harder as they stand on the edge of moral precipice together. It is. It is, Maya agrees aloud. We must treat it with caution, respect, and also reverence. A thought crystallizes. We must treat it like a knife. I can't emphasize this point enough. Something was whispering to Maya Sundaresh through the Veil, or at least maybe the Veil itself was whispering to Maya Sundaresh. Something was whispering. It definitely wasn't the witness, given that it did not know the location of the Veil. For the record, I don't believe it to be Nezarec either, given that at the time being, he was dead. He did have the ability to reach out to those beyond death that he looked at when he was communing with his acolytes, but it also seems that the presence of his relics, or at very least parts of his old carcass, were required to be nearby for this ability to actually manifest properly, otherwise he was too weak. It was only when he started regrowing with the power of the Traveler that struck his containment in the pyramid that he could even reach out to Neomuna and cause mass unrest. So, no, I don't think this is Nezarec either. In my mind, that means that we're looking at a different presence of darkness that must be responsible for these whispers. The obvious note is that these whispers seemingly might arise from within the Veil itself, and it's here that I want to jump to a conclusion and then explain a little theory that might support it. Feel free to pick this apart, because there are bound to be other explanations, but I think that the voice which was speaking to Maya Sundaresh, the voice that sounded like herself, which probably came from within the Veil, was that of the Winnower itself. Before we get to any of that though, a word of caution, and then we will jump in and explain some things that support this idea. The word of caution is simply this: it is a big jump to make an assumption like this and to immediately assume that this is the Winnower. After all, we just know one salient fact, which is the idea that beings of darkness are able to communicate through whispers because of the way that darkness causes noetic effects. And to be quite frank, there are other individuals who could have done this. The one that comes to mind is Savathun. After all, she knew where the Veil was, she had an agenda with regards to the Veil, including keeping it hidden and keeping it safe, and after all, at the time being, she did wield darkness, and it's not as though it would be a major hurdle for her to assume some kind of communication in this manner. After all, one of her titles is literally the God of Whispers, so it's not impossible to believe that this might have been Savathun. Not to mention that the illicit slipping in of a bit of information to assure confirmation bias in Maya's mind is absolutely something that Savathun would do if it helped her get her way. It's one major hurdle to anything considering that this might be the Winnower, but I wanted to put that forward for consideration before anything else. It would also be a tangible theory perhaps, and it would lead to a great irony that both Maya Sundaresh and her facsimile, Lakshmi II, would have been manipulated by the Witch Queen at some point. Regardless, it's an alternative possibility that doesn't lead anywhere, and I think that Bungie is laying a deeper foundation than that. As a result, I'm going to explore the Veil and Maya's connection to it, and the possibility for the Winnower to be that voice. So if we are going to examine that idea, we need to examine the premise that the Winnower is connected to the Veil. And at bare minimum, thanks to the Witness, we know that the Winnower does exist, and we know that it was in part created thanks to the intervention of the Winnower. After all, the Witness says the line, quote, "Gods forged us both, but they cannot tell the knife what shape to carve," as well as saying that it was not the Winnower, but instead was the first knife clutched in its hand. It's worth remembering as well that the actual creation process of the Witness involved the use of darkness that was learned by the precursor civilization through the Veil. From the darkness within the Veil, they found the means to control the chaos of the light. The obvious assertion then is that the Winnower was the one inside who taught them of darkness when they interacted with the Veil. And this leads on to a further assertion, the idea that the Traveler is to the Veil as the Gardener is to the Winnower. Something that of course is supported by the very telling of the story in Unveiling and the manuscripts that we recovered at the end of Shadowkeep. And then, of course, one has to consider what Micah 10 discovered. The memories of the Traveler found within the Pale Heart contain a multitude of revelations. But in particular, I think if we look at the moment where the EDZ shard was created, and the memory of that moment, Micah reveals something staggering.
I am afraid. Reunited with a family member, or no, terrified. I can feel. They do not want unity. They want stagnation. No, you can't do this. I won't let you. feeling. I do not want it. I shed the infection, and it drops to the world below. Storms rage in my cast-off flesh. Storms of recollection. I must stop this.
This displays the moment when the EDZ shard was created, and it likely shows the moment at which the Witness nearly succeeded in joining the Traveler to the Veil as was its plan all along. Anyone who remembers the words of Asa from the Season of the Deep will remember this moment and remember that this was part of the original plan of the Precursors.
They brought the Veil back to the Gardener in an attempt to strengthen their connection. There, they could reshape reality itself. The Gardener would not allow it. And so it fled their world.
This union between the Veil and the Traveler is clearly what the Traveler was fleeing from. But the initial words of the Traveler in Micah's vision imply that it wasn't being reunited with something, but someone. A family member. This again hints back to the ideas that were displayed in the Unveiling manuscripts, where the Gardener and the Winnower existed alongside each other, and they were existing because they simply had to exist. There was no reason for it, they simply were. If they are truly the oldest beings in existence, then a family member might be an adequate way to describe one another. And so if Micah's vision does show the moment where the Traveler and Veil were nearly connected, then we have to consider that they are merely the physical conduits of those greater beings of Unveiling, the Winnower and the Gardener. In this moment of connection, the Gardener and the Winnower were so close to being in each other's confines once again, something that the Traveler rejected with enough force to literally shed a part of its shell, which then fell to Earth and was seemingly corrupted enough to create the dark forest below. This connection is compelling all on its own, and by comparing the Veil and the Traveler and the stories that run alongside them concerning the Gardener and the Winnower, it does feel as though there is a deeper connection between these four different articles, be they the greater consciousnesses within those physical manifestations, or the physical manifestations of the Veil and the Traveler themselves. But this is just one side to the connection. If we want to understand whether the Winnower is within the Veil, we need to look at the Veil in isolation as well. So let's examine that idea. Is the Winnower somehow deeply connected to the Veil on its own, without any considerations of what the Traveler's input might be? So if we're going to look at that, maybe we should look at other instances where the Veil is mentioned and see if there is another point at which something deeper within the Veil is implied to exist. And luckily we have lore that shows us exactly that. Thanks to Micah's ghosts, we have been given that information. During our effort to stop the Witness back before the final battle of the Final Shape, we went out searching for those lost ghosts, and one such ghost was Balthazar. He went to examine the Lunar Pyramid and its connection to the Witness. In the process of gathering this intelligence and retrieving the ghost that had initially found it, we got to hear the following lines from Micah 10.
I was afraid of this. The reason I was unable to pinpoint Balthazar's location is because it is smothered in darkness.
He's in the pyramid, isn't he?
Unfortunately, yes. You'll need to fight through the hive to get to the pyramid, then brave its security system.
Nightmares. I thought after we killed Nezarec that they'd go away. But they haven't. The pyramid must be partially responsible for them too.
Eris wrote extensive documentation on nightmares after her last encounter with them. She and I believe that they are a yet untapped power of the darkness. One that Nezarec co-opted for himself and wove into the fabric of his pyramid.
So even after his death, they persist.
Which raises a larger question. Is Nezarec truly dead? Can something that exists as an idea ever be destroyed?
One nightmare at a time, Micah. Please.
So the nightmares are an untapped power of darkness co-opted by Nezarec, if we're to believe Eris Morn and Micah's assertions, which I think we should for the moment. That's important because that deeper power has to come from somewhere. Remember that Nezarec also held the veil in his possession on behalf of the Witness, which means he might have been able to learn something greater about this untapped power of darkness, thus allowing him to manifest his own whispers into the minds of others, just in the same way that he was able to learn how to weave the nightmares into the defenses of his pyramid. This alone is not immediately a connection with a great degree of strength, but when we recover Balthazar, the intelligence we get in tandem reveals a conversation between the Witness and Nezarec, and here we do see more of a connection. It is an unbelievably important conversation for a bunch of reasons, but for the moment, I think it gives us a definitive piece of proof that there is something deeper within the veil. Take a listen.
The Scions kneel to you. Their faith is shattered, and they will look to you for guidance, for truth.
No. How is it here? Wait.
Sow the seeds of discord that will pave the way for our victory. Preach unto their greatest the truth of the darkness, so they may see beyond the veil.
This isn't now. This is some kind of recording. A memory.
Go forth, Nezarec, and show them the power of the veil, the dark of the deep, the edge of the night.
This must be what Balthazar was trying to find. Information on the Witness recorded in an artifact.
I can sense Balthazar's location. I don't think he's far. Let's get out of here and go get him.
And maybe something in this archival sphere will be of use too.
The Witness tells Nezarec to show the Scions what lies beyond the veil. It instructs him to preach the truth of darkness, to do so. Most crucially of all, though, Nezarec is instructed to show the Scions the power of the veil and the dark of the deep, the edge of the knife. It's that first note about the dark of the deep that we absolutely must focus on. The term the deep has been referenced in Destiny in one other crucial place that pertains directly to the Winnower, the Books of Sorrow. When Oryx had become the Taken King and destroyed the world of Taisha-Beth, decimating the Taisha-Bethi people and turning their Emperor Raven into one of his Taken, he went deep into his throne world and prepared a ritual which invited a mysterious and terrible presence into the flesh of an unborn ogre. This passage ends with the arrival of that terrible darkness in the ogre's flesh, and we now know that was likely to be the Winnower. The passage announces that process of summoning and the arrival of the presence with these words: "He went out, and he created an altar, and he prepared an unborn ogre. He called on the deep, saying, I can see you in the sky. You are the waves which are battles, and the battles are the waves. Come into this vessel I have prepared for you." And it arrived. The deep itself. The dark of the deep itself. Note that in both these instances where the Witness is talking to Nezarec about the Books of Sorrow, the word deep is capitalized. And I don't think that's because it's a place, which could also be a valid possibility. I think instead it's because it's a title or a name. If Nezarec was showing the Scions the dark of the deep beyond the veil, then perhaps they were being invited to stare into its depths, to understand what lies beyond its entrance, to venture into it mentally as we have entered the heart of the Traveler physically. Perhaps they were interacting with the Veil and diving into the clutches of something even darker. Something which at that moment Nezarec was using to sow discord amongst the Scions, and which would have served the purposes of the Witness, but which perhaps was also the clutches of something even more powerful, a being beyond that lies within the Veil. And if we're to believe the likely assertion, that being may well have been the Winnower. The histories of the Scions as recounted by the Scion Councillor Match to Emperor Callus tell us of a time when the Scions were subjugated by so-called God Thoughts, the operant overlords who specifically attempted to wipe out the old Scion religious beliefs that implied that there was a spark of divinity in every common person. For the last year and a half or so, it was assumed that Nezarec was one of these so-called God Thoughts, and that may well still be true. It's clear at this point that he is delicately intertwined with the history of the Scions, and his influence has deeply ingrained itself on their culture. There is evidence that suggested that he corrupted and subjugated the old religious ways of the Scions, and it wouldn't be too far of a stretch to believe that. But if he sowed discord amongst the Scions by showing them the dark of the deep and what lay beyond the Veil, I'm not so sure if he was the only God Thought. Perhaps there was another that was imposing its own vision upon the Scions, one that demanded that they discard the notion that everyone is sacred, and instead worship something else, an idea that demands a little bit more of a brutal approach, one which requires you to live with a little bit of care for yourself and yourself alone, something sharper, the edge of the knife. What if one of these God Thoughts that was found deep in the Veil was the Winnower instead? To bring all of this back to our original point, I think it feels clear at this point, even if it's just by implications, that something is residing deep within the Veil, and all our clues seem to point to it being associated with the Winnower, as the Gardener is associated with the Traveler. This then leaves us with this final question. If the Winnower was the one whispering to Maya Sundaresh, which as I stated at the beginning, is not completely clear for the moment, and if Maya Sundaresh is the same as the original one who died on Neomuna, then are Maya's plans as the conductor playing into some greater plot for the Winnower? And furthermore, could this possibly be related to the Echo? Was this a part of the Winnower's plan all along? Could this be the next step in a long plot set in motion long ago at the dawn of time? I don't know. In order to understand more, we need to strive to understand the Conductor's plans, the nature of the Veil, the communications of the Winnower, and what darkness might lie beneath its surface. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. Remember to sign up today for free on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation using my link down below in the description or the pinned comment. New players and anyone returning after 6 months of inactivity will get a huge bonus pack with multiple premium vehicles, 100k Silver Lions, and 7 days of premium. Thanks again to War Thunder for sponsoring this video. But that's all from me for now. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and leave a like, and leave your own thoughts down below in the comments section. Please, this is a theory, so feel free to poke holes in it as much as you like. I'm pretty sure that there are moments at which you can easily criticize this theory, so if you think there's something else going on, let me know. I want to know about it. I really do think that there is some importance to this lore entry that is going to be understood later on, but we've got to unravel that first. In order to understand more of it, we need to dig deeper. And if you want more stories from worlds near and far, go ahead and hit subscribe and the bell next to subscribe to turn on those email notifications. But as per usual, know that your viewership, as always, is quite enough for me. And that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Perodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.